Hello friends, welcome back. Subscribe, comment, like, and share with family and friends the best park ranger stories. Let's begin. Months, and I almost quit in my first week. You see, I've always preferred being in nature as opposed to the city. Mostly because I enjoy the quiet, and when I was a kid, watching Crocodile Hunter and other nature conservation shows and stories. I love animals. The things I've seen and had to deal with, though, I'm not sure they classify as even real. The first night I showed up to work, I arrived 10 minutes early, and little did I know at the time, it was the worst mistake I made on my first day. It's a small park and it didn't need more than 2 rangers on site at a time, but most of the time we just had one. I was greeted by the ranger from the shift before on arrival, and given the rundown of what I'd be doing that night, mostly just hanging out in the information building and monitoring trail and site cameras. Once every couple of hours in the 10-hour shift, I would patrol one of the 4 quadrants the park was divided into. What no one told me my first day is that the night shift park ranger either goes missing or dies within the first week. I found this out later that night, and not from the first shift ranger. After the first 2 hours of monitoring cameras and helping the 2 people that stopped by the information center, I set out on patrol, choosing the quadrant I went to at random. In the end, I decided on the East Quadrant, one of the more undisturbed areas of the park. I hopped in the sorry excuse for a patrol car, more like a buggy or ATV than a car, and headed towards the East Quadrant. It was a quiet drive for the most part, except for the sounds of crickets and occasional owls hoot. But as I got closer to the East Quadrant, I noticed the sounds began to die away, slowly but surely until all was silent. I preferred the quiet anyway, so the sounds dying away was less alarming than it was calming for me. I had a smile on my face as I began making my round. I expected not to find many, if any, campers in this section of the park. But about halfway through my patrol, I came across a bald man stumbling down the trail. I stopped the car a little ways away from him, weak headlights shining directly at him. I pulled out my flashlight and hopped out of the car, approaching the hobbling man. "Excuse me, sir. Are you all right? You don't look that well." He had stopped dead in his tracks when I noticed him, but I hardly took notice of it as I approached. The only thing that struck me as strange was the fact that the man had his head tilted down, so a shadow cast across his face. He spoke with a speech impediment. He spoke slowly and deeply, and it sounded like his mouth was stuffed with bread. "Ran, Jer." He hadn't moved a muscle, and I never saw his mouth open as he spoke. It struck me as odd, and I stopped with a little bit of distance between us. The injured-looking man hadn't moved at all since I spotted him. "You must be the new ranger." I noticed a slight amount of movement in the shadows splayed across his face, and a small amount of noise, like something being sharpened or sliced. I found it odd that this man was able to identify me as the new ranger, but maybe he was just a regular to the park. "I am. Do you need help?" "Ich bin so long since I've had a meal ran. Jer help me." I had brought along a few protein bars with me, wanting a snack for the shift, and I had brought some along as I didn't know how long the patrol would take. "Come with me back over to my patrol car." "Have you been lost out here, sir? Do you need any assistance other than food?" The strange man made no move to come closer. He just stood where I had first found him, stone still. "I am only hungry, Ranger." I stared at him for a few more moments before turning to walk back to my patrol car. "Then come with me. I'll give you some protein bars, and after that, I think you should come with me." I trailed off because at that moment I felt and heard something behind me, breathing down my neck and breathing heavily. From behind I heard, "Last mistake. You'll ever make Ranger now. I can eat!" I heard the snapping of bones from behind me as the strange man slammed into my back, winding me and knocking me to the ground. I tried to catch my breath and scramble up and towards my patrol car, but with surprising speed after such a forceful blow, the man put all of his weight onto my back. I heard a guttural sound coming from the man behind me and felt a slimy smattering of something wet drip onto and soak through my uniform. Had begun to recover from the blow to my back and noticed I still clutched the flashlight in my hand. I took in a sharp, quick breath, bracing myself as I twisted and swung wildly, connecting with the butt of the flashlight to something as his foot slid off my back. I took a look up at the man and noticed the most horrifying image I'd ever seen up to that point. His mouth hung open in the most inhuman way, and rows of long needle and saw-like teeth, the number of which was impossibly large. Drool dripped from his mouth, and the sickly sweet smell of rotting flesh and death assaulted my nostrils. The man was posed like a tiger ready to pounce as I stared at him. But the longer I stared in horror at this monstrosity, the more I noticed he wouldn't move a muscle. The creature in front of me snarled as I began backing up slowly, scooting my way across the ground towards the patrol car. "You got lucky this time, Ranger, I'll get you. Next time, you come to this place, just like the last." He made a noise, an unearthly noise like stones grinding together mixed with the call of a wild animal. Something about his face gave me the impression he was amused, like he was laughing. I got to my feet and kept eye contact as I opened the door to my patrol car and climbed inside, trembling and struggling to get the key into the ignition as I stared at the creature. I noticed he still didn't move if I blinked, so luckily I didn't have to strain my eyes. But multitasking and spatial awareness were already not my strong suit. I struggled for another 5 minutes before starting the patrol vehicle back up, and I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, swerving around the man and trying to make my way around the circuit to get back to the information center. The haunting laughter of the creature followed me as it echoed throughout the forest. I feel like he let me go on purpose. It's like he got bored of easy kills and now he wants to hunt me. I hastily completed the circuit and made it back to the information center. This thing had told me he had killed other rangers in the past, but there's no mention at all of anything like him in the park. So as soon as I made it back to the information center, I began to write out a list, a reminder for myself and the next ranger after I quit this place, because at the time I convinced myself I was going to be able to quit. I took a sheet of printer paper from the machine and began writing, "Rules to survive the night shift." Rule 1. Never break line of sight with the bald man with the strange lisp. If you do, pray he lets you go. It was one of those late nights on the job, but that didn't bother me at all. In fact, it was one of my favorite parts of being a park ranger. Hanging around late at night, with just a few of my fellow rangers in the middle of the woods, it was just like huddling around a campfire while you told stories. Except we were indoors around a fireplace. It was the middle of spring, but it had been cold lately, so while the afternoons were pleasant, the nights had been chilly. Which was why we were all inside gathered around a fire while on the clock. The ranger station was beyond comfortable with a fire, so I was contently sitting in one of the many leather couches facing it. We were all midway through a shift, and like many nights on the job, it was quiet, so we got to talking about nothing in particular. There's nothing like the natural flow of an unplanned conversation. Outside, the evening had slowly given way to night, and the darkness had settled upon the woods with its usual silent thoroughness. The area may be a park during the day, but at night it was the woods. Parks inherently sound fun and brings to mind cookouts, whereas the woods has an inherently spooky vibe. There were 4 of us sitting by the fire in the ranger station on that chilly night. Me, Harland, Anthony, and Craig. Craig had just finished talking about his cousin's wedding when Anthony asked Harland what his scariest story was from working here all these years. Usually, Harland just chuckled and said he'd heard some crazy things over the years, but not this time. This time he sat there quietly for a moment before he said, "The Witch of Blackthorn Creek." That was when we all went completely still. If we were just like people huddled around a campfire, Harland was the one in charge of building the fire. He was the ranger we always deferred to. He'd been on the job long enough to have earned that right. Harland's family had also been in the area for generations, so if anyone had any stories to tell about what may have happened here, it was him. Plus, he was a terrific guy, hardworking and beyond helpful when you needed something. So when someone like Harland tells you he's heard of a story like that, you listen intently, especially with the tone of voice he used. Serious and no nonsense without a trace of amusement. "The Witch of Blackthorn Creek," Harland began in a clear voice as we all gave him our full attention. The story was first told to me by my Uncle George, who had been a lumberjack for years. According to him, people said there was a curse on the land, which was placed there by a witch. It all started one year when the harvest went bad. Since there had been nothing but plentiful harvest every year, it made people beyond suspicious. There was barely enough grain and stuff to get through winter. It didn't help matters that the town had generally been prosperous but had recently started to go through some financial difficulties. Then, numerous bits of misfortune happened within the community over the years. Houses burning down, people going missing and never being found again. Periodically, there would be something odd left lying around near where someone had vanished. Creepy things like weird-looking dolls made from wood that never failed to rattle people. There wasn't anyone around who people thought was capable of anything like this. And since one of the families in town had experienced something like this before in a different town many years ago, they suspected there was some kind of curse put on them, especially after a few people who kept track of all the strange events realized all of them took place on a full moon. Harlan took a sip of his coffee before he continued. It all came to a head when there was a terrible accident at the town lumber mill. A fire that no one could figure out how it started. Several employees died and many others were badly injured. And the lumber mill, which was one of the biggest employers around, closed. That was when the paranoia that had been lingering under the surface boiled over. So when some people from town found an abandoned cottage in the woods near Blackthorn Creek, with weird symbols written on the walls and the floor, they grabbed their torches, set the place on fire, and watched it burn. According to the crowd, the cabin took forever to burn, much longer than the people thought possible. But once it did finally burn down, they took the ashes and buried them deep in the woods and didn't mark the location, hoping that would be the end of it. And for a while that seemed to be the case. But every once in a while something would happen that would make people in town look over their shoulders. Nothing major. A bit of bad luck in the form of an injury, or some suspicious noises outside the house after dark, and perhaps some scratch marks on the door or the wall. But ever since then, people would be very careful what they did, especially if there was a full moon. Then he paused for a moment to look at the fire, which was crackling pleasantly in the fireplace. I couldn't tell you how old I was when I first heard the story, but I remember exactly how I felt. Confused. Because the story, although creepy and entertaining, didn't quite make sense to me. And I said something to Uncle George about that. And he laughed. Then he said he agreed that the story was long on atmosphere and short on believability. That's when he got serious. Told me that although the story was a bit of fiction, he never doubted that it came from somewhere, and there was indeed something going on out in the woods. Then he added that it didn't matter how old I was, where I was, who I was with, or what was going on. If I got a terrible feeling, I should listen to it, and I've listened to every feeling I've gotten since then. It's never served me wrong. He looked around at us, slowly taking us all in. I've never quite believed that story, but I will be the last person to deny that in all the years I've been out here, I've felt things on occasion, things that made the hair stand up on the back of my neck, and on even fewer occasions I've seen things, fleeting glances at things that I wasn't sure I saw, but there was one time when I not only felt something, I heard something. The air in the ranger station was completely still. I briefly glanced at my colleagues as Harlan said this, and they met my glance, and I could see they were just as gripped by the story as I was. It was about 30 years ago, Harlan explained. I was just starting out as a park ranger. This was back in the early 90s when technology and life in general was very different from today. I'd grown up out in nature, and I'd seen plenty of scary movies, and more importantly, I'd grown up hearing countless spooky stories about what may or may not have been lurking outside, so I wasn't exactly sheltered. But there are some things you're never truly prepared to experience. The fire in the fireplace popped in the grate, but we were so absorbed in Harlan's story we barely noticed. There was plenty of wood in the fire, so we didn't have to worry about that for a while. It was early November. Halloween had just ended, which made everyone sad because I remember that year was a particularly fun one. Darkness seemed to be arriving earlier and earlier, so I was barely halfway through my shift when the sun was going down. I remember it had been raining almost every day, so the days were all gray and cloudy, and the nights were damp with plenty of fog. But that particular morning was dry. All the leaves that had clung to the trees had been scattered by the winds and rain, so they lay there on the grass all damp and torn. My job on that particular day was to go around raking them up, so they didn't completely cover the trails and paths that people walked on. The chill in the air was the chill only late fall can bring, the dampness that seems to soak into your skin and never let go. I had just finished one section of the park and was walking back to my truck when the rain started up again, and it did so with a fury. So I hustled it to the truck, got inside, and headed back to the ranger station where I planned to spend the rest of the evening. And since it was a quiet night at the ranger station, it looked like I would get what I wanted. I was used to working the late shift by myself as the night supervisor, so being alone didn't bother me. I'd always been a quiet type who liked to read a book, so it was an ideal situation for me. except for that night. Harlan took a deep breath before he continued. Because Halloween was over and the rain had been steady, the park hadn't received as many visitors as it usually had. But I was inside the ranger station, this ranger station in fact, which was just as cozy and warm as you see it now. Plus, now that I was done with my task, I was free to read a book, so I wasted no time in curling up by the fire with a paperback. I'd spent many a shift this way, and it was fine by me. I'd happily read a book on a nice day, but on a rainy day, nothing better. Eventually, I started to get hungry. Since I'd just brought a light snack but turned out to be craving something bigger, I decided to order pizza. There was a local joint that was only a few minutes away that often delivered out here back then, so I didn't hesitate to give them a call. I ordered a medium pizza with pepperoni, and as I hung up, the rain started to really pound heavily on the station roof. I knew from experience that the rain pounding on the station roof could truly be loud. It seemed to surround you from all sides. But by the time the headlights pulled into the driveway, the rain had faded to a slight drizzle. But I could see the grass leading up here was pretty well soaked, and there were numerous small puddles on both the grass and the road. The trees were swaying along with the winds, and the sky was getting darker by the minute as night was settling in. By now, the outdoor lights had started to switch on as the car from the pizza place pulled up in front of the station, its windshield wipers going back and forth as it stopped in front of the entrance. I stood in front of it, under the part of the roof that kept me out of the rain. The driver, a young guy named Derek in his early 20s, got out of the driver's seat and grabbed the pizza from the passenger's side. Derek had delivered here before, and he'd always done a great job. We chit-chatted as I handed him the cash with a generous tip. Then Derek handed me the pizza and was just about to go back to his car before he stopped and stared at something behind me. He paused and said that it would probably sound crazy, but it looked like there was a woman lurking in the woods near the ranger station. We all sat there silently for a moment before Harlan continued. I remember just standing there when he told me. The words sounded almost foreign as Derek said them out loud. My first reaction was that it was impossible, but there was only one way to find out, so I turned behind me to look at where he was pointing. He took another sip of coffee. The cluster of trees he was pointing at was a dense area of tall pine trees. They've been long gone by now, but back then, there wasn't much in the way of illumination out there, but even I could see there was nothing there. I stood there, the pizza still clutched in my hand as I waited for anything to happen. But nothing emerged from the woods. I was just about to turn back to Derek when I heard "Get out" from beside me in a hushed voice, clear as could be. I turned around immediately to look at Derek, and without saying a word, I knew he'd heard it too. But while it was creepy as could be, I didn't know for sure what it meant. It didn't come out as an ominous command. More like a warning, but I won't lie. Standing there outside, I'd never felt fear like that before. I'd been afraid before and I'd been afraid after, but not like that. That fear was less like a feeling and more like a part of your body, like it's always there and only rarely are you truly aware of it. Sitting there watching Harlan, it was clear that although we were sitting there in the present, he had been immediately transported back to that cold November night. I couldn't have told you how much time passed. May have only been a minute or two. But despite the dwindling light, I thought I could see shapes moving far out in the woods. Very far out. After a moment, you couldn't see anything at all. Then Harlan's voice became quieter. To this day, I have no idea why that sight filled me with so much fear, just like I also have no idea how I knew it was people, but I did. And I knew it was people, as in more than one, much more than one. But I had no idea exactly how many. Then, almost as if on cue, I heard the word, "now." And it was all the motivation I needed to tell Derek we had to go. He didn't need to be told twice because we hopped in his car and got out of there as fast as we could. Didn't stop for about 20 miles, and we were far away from the ranger station. By that point, the fear had slowly faded and I was starving, so we split the pizza while debating what to tell my superiors. I eventually decided to say that I was feeling really sick and went to see a doctor I knew. Harlan chuckled, but it didn't take long for me to realize my excuse for leaving would be completely forgotten. Because after I left, the ranger station had been broken into by a group of people. The security camera we had at the time saw all 6 of them, dressed from head to toe in black, break right through the front door. Just crashed right through it. Then minutes later, they came back out without taking anything and vanished into the trees. The cops thoroughly searched the area but found nothing. I found out when I called my superiors to tell them I had to leave because I was feeling horrible. From the time on the camera, they appeared to arrive within mere minutes after I left with Derek. We all exchanged a look as the fact that he really was talking about this ranger station dawned on us. Sitting across from us, Harlan didn't say anything, but I knew he could tell the three of us were seeing the ranger station like never before. The conclusion the cops reached, Harlan eventually said, is that it was a gang of professional criminals who saw the ranger station and decided to see what they could find. Since there was apparently nothing they could make use of, they split. And every year on that day since that happened, I've taken a single flower and left it by where Derek says he saw someone that night. I've never seen or heard that voice since that night, but on occasion I've felt the presence of something or someone watching me, and not in an unpleasant way. But that's the thing about the woods. There's no telling what you may find in them. And if you're really paying attention, it's amazing what you can learn. Like I learned that November night all those years ago was a full moon. The clouds just happened to obscure it out here. I used to work as a ranger in a national park in the early 90s. There was only one rule we kept there: don't go down Creeker's Cave. One day I broke it. This was my first job out of college. As a newcomer, my job was mostly to check people's climbing permits, sell tickets, and give them a brief layout of the park. The park itself was not popular, so there was only me and one other ranger named Thomas. I hoped I'd get to know Thomas more over time, but he would leave before the sun came up and come back long after it had set. One day the boredom was eating me alive. I had to try to talk to him. I was on my fourth coffee, yawning, rubbing my eyes to stay awake. I was about to give up when the door in front creaked, and Thomas's nimble steps echoed down the hall. "Hey," I called out as I saw his body pass the door. He stopped and slowly turned his head, his eyes wide, staring into mine. "Didn't mean to scare you." As soon as I said it, his body relaxed and he let out a deep sigh. "Hey," Thomas repeated and started walking away. "Care to join? I got some beer," I yelled into the hall. He stopped again. "It's late. Just a quick one." We never had a chance to talk, really. I heard a sigh from the hallway. He walked through the door, nodded towards me, and opened one of the beers. I could finally get a good look at him again. He was a man in his mid to late 50s with brown eyes, graying hair, and a graying beard. Not particularly tall or small, and not fat nor slim. His ranger uniform had sweat marks, sunburns, and a few tears. When he reached out for the beer, I could see a small circular scar around his wrist. Old, clean. We cheered and then sank back into our chairs. Thomas picked up the bottle and twisted it around, digging at the label, taking large sips in between the digs. "How long have you been working here, Thomas?"
10 years, and do you like it?
"It's nice. I enjoy the solitude. You got any family?" He scratched at the label. "There's only ever one rule here," he said finally, "and people still break it." He took another large chug. There was less than a quarter of the beer left. "What's up with the rule?" He blinked fast and looked my way. "Nothing. The Creeker's Cave is just off limits." "But why?" "It's a dangerous cave. People get lost in there." He paused. "Sometimes they come out wrong." He stared at the map. "What do you mean?" He finished his beer, put it down, and left the room. I stared out after him. The next day, the traffic was non-existent. 2 men had requested permits for that day to scale the caves, but they hadn't shown up yet. There was an old archive room filled with newspapers that I had barely touched before. After yesterday's conversation with Thomas, I wondered if I could find anything regarding the cave. I put a small iron bell on the desk and walked to the room. The dust flew all around. My nose was stuffed immediately. I covered my face with my shirt and started putting the boxes of newspapers on a table in the room. The articles were mostly what I expected. The same old ones about the new park benches and animals from local newspapers. I was taking down more and more boxes, still not finding anything, almost giving up. But then my eyes darted over a title: "Ancient Writing Found in Creeker's Cave." Finally, ding, come on, just a minute, ding, ding, Jesus. I walked to the reception. The 2 men were standing there talking to each other. They stopped when they saw me get out. One of them was a tall man who carried barely anything, and the other was much smaller with a large backpack and camera equipment. "Here are the permits," the tall one said. "What's with the cameras?" I said, and picked up the permits. "We're filming a movie," the short one said. The tall one shot him a mean look. "Just getting some footage while we climb," he said. "It's a lot of stuff to take around in a cave. We'll manage," the tall one murmured. While I checked the permits, the small one was looking at the man, fixated on one spot. "Your permits are all good." I handed them the papers back. What caves are you planning on exploring? A few up north. I tried to think of the caves that were up north. None of them needed any climbing equipment. Which ones specifically? The tall one looked at the map behind him. His backpack was open. Inside was a picture of a cave with some sort of graffiti or something on the wall. Haven't decided yet, he said and turned around, walking away. Do you have the radio frequency? I called after them. Yes. We'll call if we need something, the tall one said and shut the door behind him. I stared at the map, trying to see if I had missed a cave, but there was none. I shrugged my shoulders and went back into the storage room. The newspaper stared at me like a pot of gold. I skipped all the text and stared down at the photo. It was black and white and hard to see. I put it up to the ceiling lights and squinted my eyes. I tried to remember the ancient writings from my high school class, not that there were a lot, but the letters seemed so familiar, like I should have known them. The arches, the lines, they all joined together so well, like they were supposed to be exactly that way. I couldn't figure it out, but something burning inside me really wanted to know. I shook my head and stared at the clock. 30 minutes had gone by, but it felt like seconds. The archaeologist quoted in the article, Dr. R. Fallows, had apparently refused to be photographed near the cave. A small note at the bottom said he had died the following spring with no cause listed. Rattling. Static. Help! The radio! I ran to the desk. Ranger station. What's your... Please help. My friend got stuck. His rope snapped. He can't get out. Where are you? Creeker's Cave. A wave of coldness washed over me. Ranger? Yes, I'm coming. I grabbed the rope from the back and ran out. A small drizzle started as I stood over the cave. The sign saying "Danger, keep out" stared at me. I shook my head and made my way in. The cave was cold and silent save for the water dripping off the ceiling. The opening was narrow and the cave quickly narrowed further and the ceiling lowered. I lowered my head and turned the flashlight on. A water droplet fell back down my shirt, sending a shiver down my spine which I was trying to keep down. In the distance I could see a diverging. Thomas's word echoed in my ears. The last thing I wanted was to get lost. Hello? I called out. Silence, then a faint sound from the left side. I ran a little deeper and called out again. Ranger? Echoed through the cave from a distance. Coming! I yelled and ran towards the sound. Here! A flashlight waved from a distance. The small man lay on the floor with a small scratch on his head, and the camera equipment lay beside him. You okay? Yeah, hit my head trying to get him out. Where is he? Down there, he pointed. I made my way forward. A strange iron smell was in the air. The cave kept getting narrower. I slowed down, pointing my flashlight at the ground, making sure I didn't slip and fall too. But the ground wasn't getting steeper. There was a black dot right in front of me that soon transformed into a human. It was the man, standing staring at the wall. I came closer to him. On the wall was the writing from the newspaper picture. Oh my God, I whispered. His eyes darted my way. Now, he yelled. My whole body jumped back. A camera click echoed through the cave. The man began to whisper to himself quickly, looking at the signs on the wall. The sounds he was making were like nothing I've heard before. Noises I didn't think the human mouth or throat could create. Rhythmic but devoid of any melody. Fast but slowed at the weirdest intervals. What the fuck is going on? I yelled, slowly backing off. The man stopped reading, froze, and his body began twitching, slowly at first, then shaking violently. The iron smell grew. The water from the ceiling dripped faster. The man stopped shaking, his face completely relaxed, blank, with no emotions. He looked up, his eyes wide, staring at me as if I were prey. I turned around and began running away, full speed. The man's steps soon echoed after me. He began growling loudly like a rabid dog. I ran further. It felt like his breath was on my neck. Then I saw the small man standing there, camera in his hand, pointing it at us. You don't understand, he said. This is what it does. The man running after me gripped my shirt and pulled me towards him, dragging me closer to him. Shock ran up and down my spine. I tried to shake my shoulders, but to no avail. He began digging his nails into me. My mind panicked. I smashed the flashlight over his head. His grip finally released a little. I didn't wait and immediately jerked my body away. His fingernails ripped pieces of my clothes off. I continued running. The small man tried to get in my way, but I pushed him and kicked him to the ground. Wait, no! He screamed, but I didn't listen. My mind only focused on finding the exit. The small man's scream sounded behind me, eventually turning to an indistinct grumble. then the ray. A ray of sun. The green. The park. I pushed the twigs and bushes out of my way, running straight to the ranger cabin. Opening the door, I had to lean on the table, almost collapsing on the ground, panting. "You've been there." I jerked myself up. Thomas stood behind the counter, shaking his head. There were two men. One of them, something happened to him in there. "We need to call. No one is coming." His voice was quiet and certain. "I called once. 12 years ago. They told me to wait inside." He paused. "My wife said the same thing, the iron smell. I realized I'd carried it out with me. It was in my clothes." Thomas finally looked up. For the first time, I noticed how deep the circles under his eyes were. His hands, wrapped around the mug, had old scars across the knuckles. "I don't know what it was before," he said. "I know what it is now." He stood slowly. "And I know it doesn't stay in the cave. We have maybe an hour before dark. Pack only what matters." He paused with his hand on the door. "And don't look back at the cave when we leave. Whatever you hear, don't look back." I've been a park ranger for a little under 6 months, and I almost quit in my first week. You see, I've always preferred being in nature as opposed to the city, mostly because I enjoy the quiet, and when I was a kid, watching Crocodile Hunter and other nature conservation shows and stories, I love animals. The things I've seen and had to deal with, though, I'm not sure they classify as even real. The first night I showed up to work, I arrived 10 minutes early, and little did I know at the time, it was the worst mistake I made on my first day. It's a small park, and it didn't need more than 2 rangers on site at a time, but most of the time we just had one. I was greeted by the ranger from the shift before on arrival, and given the rundown of what I'd be doing that night. Mostly just hanging out in the information building and monitoring trail and site cameras. Once every couple of hours in the 10-hour shift, I would patrol one of the 4 quadrants the park was divided into. What no one told me my first day is that the night shift park ranger either goes missing or dies within the first week. I found this out later that night, and not from the first shift ranger. After the first 2 hours of monitoring cameras and helping the 2 people that stopped by the information center, I set out on patrol, choosing the quadrant I went to at random. In the end, I decided on the east quadrant, one of the more undisturbed areas of the park. I hopped in the sorry excuse for a patrol car, more like a buggy or ATV than a car, and headed towards the east quadrant. It was a quiet drive for the most part, except for the sounds of crickets and occasional owls' hoot. But as I got closer to the east quadrant, I noticed the sounds began to die away, slowly but surely, until all was silent. I preferred the quiet anyway, so the sounds dying away was less alarming than it was calming for me. I had a smile on my face as I began making my round. I expected not to find many, if any, campers in this section of the park. But about halfway through my patrol, I came across a bald man stumbling down the trail. I stopped the car a little ways away from him, weak headlights shining directly at him. I pulled out my flashlight and hopped out of the car, approaching the hobbling man. "Excuse me, sir? Are you all right? You don't look that well." He had stopped dead in his tracks when I noticed him, but I hardly took notice of it as I approached. The only thing that struck me as strange was the fact that the man had his head tilted down, so a shadow cast across his face. He spoke with a speech impediment. He spoke slowly and deeply, and it sounded like his mouth was stuffed with bread. Ranger. He hadn't moved a muscle, and I never saw his mouth open as he spoke. It struck me as odd, and I stopped with a little bit of distance between us. The injured-looking man hadn't moved at all since I spotted him. "You must be the Newton Ranger." I noticed a slight amount of movement in the shadows splayed across his face and a small amount of noise like something being sharpened or sliced. I found it odd that this man was able to identify me as the new ranger, but maybe he was just a regular to the park. "I am. Do you need help?" "It's been so long since I've had a meal, Ranger. Help me." I had brought along a few protein bars with me, wanting a snack for the shift, and I had brought some along as I didn't know how long the patrol would take. "Come with me back over to my patrol car." "Have you been lost out here, sir? Do you need any assistance other than food?" The strange man made no move to come closer. He just stood where I had first found him, stone still. "I am only hungry, Ranger." I stared at him for a few more moments before turning to walk back to my patrol car. "Then come with me. I'll give you some protein bars, and after that, I think you should come with me." I trailed off because at that moment I felt and heard something behind me, breathing down my neck and breathing heavily. From behind I heard, "Last mistake you'll ever make, Ranger, now. I can eat." I heard the snapping of bones from behind me as the strange man slammed into my back, winding me and knocking me to the ground. I tried to catch my breath and scramble up and towards my patrol car. But with surprising speed after such a forceful blow, the man put all of his weight onto my back. I heard a guttural sound coming from the man behind me and felt a slimy smattering of something wet drip onto and soak through my uniform. I had begun to recover from the blow to my back and noticed I still clutched the flashlight in my hand. I took in a sharp, quick breath, bracing myself as I twisted and swung wildly, connecting with the butt of the flashlight to something as his foot slid off my back. I took a look up at the man and noticed the most horrifying image I'd ever seen up to that point. His mouth hung open in the most inhuman way, and rows of long needle and saw-like teeth, the number of which was impossibly large. Drool dripped from his mouth, and the sickly sweet smell of rotting flesh and death assaulted my nostrils. The man was posed like a tiger ready to pounce as I stared at him, but the longer I stared in horror at this monstrosity, the more I noticed he wouldn't move a muscle. The creature in front of me snarled as I began backing up slowly, scooting my way across the ground towards the patrol car. "You got lucky this time, Ranger. I'll get you. Next time, you come to this place, just like the last." He made a noise, an unearthly noise like stones grinding together mixed with the call of a wild animal. Something about his face gave me the impression he was amused, like he was laughing. I got to my feet and kept eye contact as I opened the door to my patrol car and climbed inside, trembling and struggling to get the key into the ignition as I stared at the creature. I noticed he still didn't move if I blinked, so luckily I didn't have to strain my eyes, but multitasking and spatial awareness were already not my strong suit. I struggled for another 5 minutes before starting the patrol vehicle back up, and I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, swerving around the man and trying to make my way around the circuit to get back to the information center. The haunting laughter of the creature followed me as it echoed throughout the forest. I feel like he let me go on purpose. It's like he got bored of easy kills and now he wants to hunt me. I hastily completed the circuit and made it back to the information center. This thing had told me he had killed other rangers in the past, but there's no mention at all of anything like him in the park. So as soon as I made it back to the information center, I began to write out a list, a reminder for myself and the next ranger after I quit this place, because at the time, I convinced myself I was going to be able to quit. I took a sheet of printer paper from the machine and began writing. Rules to survive the night shift. Rule 1. Never break line of sight with the bald man with the strange lisp. If you do, pray he lets you go. I've been a national park ranger for close to 2 decades. Protocols have changed a lot in that time. I write this just to try to keep people safe for the next time you venture to the big outdoors. Let me tell you about the last park I worked. I can't be too specific about the location for my job's sake. Anyway, we had clusters of campsites that we rotated annually. The idea was to prevent one group from getting overused and worn down. Let nature regrow a little bit. The winter had just passed and our big summer season was a few months away. I'm sent out to check the suitability of the campsites to decide which ones need time to recover and which ones we can open up. Winters here are cold. Not too many people camp during the winter aside from rugged masochists and Boy Scout troops led by people who believe they are rugged masochists. I didn't expect to find much out of the ordinary. The first site was clear and ready to go. As I'm trekking to the next site, I see what looks like some debris and junk down a ways in a river valley. Looks like some jackasses set up an unauthorized camp down there. Usually when that happens, they leave garbage and smoldering fires. This is going to be a pain to clear up. I approach, seeing the telltale wreckage of what must have been one hell of a party. Shit scattered everywhere, the skeletons of tents still raised up, and blood. I stop and time stops with me. Pools of blood are spread out along the ground, next to signs of something heavy being dragged into the brush. I pull my radio off my belt and pause. I then pull my Glock 22 out of my holster and rack 1 round. I'm a certified law enforcement officer, but I haven't had to use my gun in a long time. I quickly look around for any movement, then get on my radio and call in for backup. While I wait, I listen. Silence. Silence in nature isn't good. Pray get quiet when they sense a predator. I hope all the birds are being still on my account. I edge forward slowly, looking for anyone or anything. A shredded plastic cooler. A tent that has been annihilated with more blood splashed on the walls and inside. People died here, I know it. You can't lose that much blood and just walk off. But no people. Shreds of clothes and a little viscera drawing all the goddamned flies here. But no people. I've seen bears rummage through camps and destroy anything that looked edible. There are wild hogs here that cut trails through the deep brush and are even more dangerous than the bears. But this isn't either of them. The devastation here, it's just too much. Some scourge of God came through here and just ripped everything to pieces. Finally, backup arrives and I'm sent to report to HQ. They even brought medics out here. I don't know why, there's no one here to save. One of the new recruits vomits at the scene. I'm glad to get the hell out of here. I get back and HQ is abuzz. Only 4 people work here, but calls are ringing, printers printing, and the air feels electrified. The manager sees me and signals me to his office. He's pale, ashen-looking with bloodshot eyes. I sit down by his desk and he goes to the door and locks it. I've never seen him lock that door. He asks me what I saw. I tell him uninterrupted. He looks even paler afterward and his hands tremble a bit. There's a very long pause and I expect more questions. He doesn't ask any. I leave, then hear the door lock behind me. After a few minutes, I hear him call someone up, and a long, low conversation ensues. I never see him again. Word comes down from on high. We're assigned a new manager, one who excels at what he calls crises. His first order of business, a controlled burn of the unauthorized camp and the sites closest to it. I'm not arguing. I watch the smoke rise in the distance and pray that's the end of it. New orders. Relocate the existing campsites closer to HQ. Before we do that, we stake out a few trail cameras at the new locations just to make sure it's not in the middle of a nesting ground. We put up a few cameras pointed at the hog trails through the brush for good measure. A couple days pass and we go out to collect the footage. The new manager takes it all and starts studying it in his office. A couple hours into reviewing, he freaks out, starts screaming and yelling, gets on the phone calling up the line, spitting more obscenities. He spends the rest of the day and that night in the office, calling up specialists and planners. Next morning, I show up for a meeting. Manager doesn't look like he slept. Massive changes afoot. He lays out our new plans, including massively bright lampposts circling the park border as well as floodlights around the ranger station. Campsites need to be moved even closer in. Clear lines of sight from the light if possible. I butt in, telling him that defeats the point of going camping. If you're just going on a short walk through the grass, then setting up so close you can see the parking lot. He tells me to shut up, that it's just the start. The park now closes at sundown sharp. Also, we're now required to have a long gun on our person at all times. Now it isn't uncommon for rangers to carry an AR-15 or a Remington 870 shotgun going out in the deep woods. There are wild and rabid animals out there. The real concern are massive pot growers. These aren't your chill neighbor who hides a few plants behind the tomatoes. They run the spectrum from large-scale suppliers who like their privacy and dislike law enforcement, to anti-government crazies who think we have no right over them. The true patriots. Both groups have a few common points. They tend to be well-armed, they do not like lawmen, and they won't shy away from taking a pot shot at some dumb poor ranger who finds himself in their fields. Keep in mind, Elliot Ness, Mr. I fought Al Capone and one got scared off busting up Appalachian moonshiners because they constantly sniped at him in the foothills. They shoot to kill. Those are the reasons we keep the big guns around, not routine patrols. I drew the short straw and got the overnight shift. Manager tells me more changes to protocol will be listed when I return. Overnights used to be easy. Monitor the radios, bust up the parties if needed, check for poachers if they're operating nearby. Make sure the forest doesn't burn down. I clock in and per instructions go to the gun cage. My things have changed. Our shotguns have new rifled barrels so they can handle the solid slugs we've been issued. That's the kind of firepower you want to take down a charging bear. God forbid you ever need it. The AR-15s have been stepped up too. The old 15-round magazines have been replaced by 30-round ones. Someone even snuck us in hollow point rounds. Makes no damn sense. Shooting in the woods, you need full metal jacket ammo so the rounds don't go wild when they touch a twig. Hollow points just exist to do more tissue damage. This is ridiculous. This is overkill. We're not a war zone. We don't need this firepower. Next to the radio, there are new instructions. Now we're not allowed to directly respond to emergency calls. We can reply, figure out what the issue is, then we report to a new phone number I don't recognize. Time passes slowly tonight. I'm not even allowed to leave the building until sunup. A few uneventful nights pass. The new floodlights and lampposts are frying my eyes. It's so bright out there a blind man could see. A week later, some kids roll into the lot. They grab their backpacks and start hiking up the ridge. I know what they're up to. No one has booked a campsite that night. Cheap young ones going on a campout that will be a raging party. I wait for the sun to go down, confirming they're not out for a day hike. I call my manager to report. He instructs me to call the new number. I report up to them now. A curt voice answers the phone. He asks my park, then pauses. He asks the issue. Bunch of kids on an unauthorized site. Do I go break it up? I can see their campfire out the ridge right now. No, do not leave the building. Do not attempt communication. That is all. Report if there are any developments. Right after daybreak, the manager rides up. It's real early. Have you seen them? Did they leave? No, the car's still there. Let them rest. They're probably all hungover. He curses nonstop. He then goes inside to make a call. I'm outside looking up the ridge when he exits the station. One AR-15 in his hand, another one strapped across his back. Glock on his hip. He marches single-mindedly toward his car. I try to ask him what in God's name he's doing, but he isn't listening or responding. He takes a jerry can of gasoline from his car and marches up the ridge. I yell after him to no reply. I consider following him, but that doesn't seem like a good idea. I go back inside and call the number. The same curt voice. The same direct questions. Yeah, the manager went up to that campsite, armed to the teeth and carrying gasoline. What the fuck do I do? Stay there. Do not interfere. Backup is inbound. Report if there are any developments. About the same time I start to see smoke wafting off the ridge. 2 vans ride into the lot at a screaming speed. A dozen men, heavily armed and armored, exit quickly. I go out to check. Who are you guys? What's going on? The men are all lined up with that impeccable military precision. One of them, a commander, I assume exists the vehicle last. He says, which direction did he go? I mean, he's up there. I point at the increasing smoke. The men fan out and start jogging up the ridge. I hear rifles cocking as they leave. I try to shout after them, but no response. I look at the vans they came in. Large nondescript. They just say DOI response team on the side. Half an hour later, they return, dragging the manager with them. He is bound in zip ties. He screams, I did what needed to be done. Trust me, it's worse than they thought. We can't stop this. Burn it all. They throw him in the back and sedate him. The commander approaches me, my neck hairs bristle in cold fear. I need to see the office. All computers and anything with a hard drive is coming with me. He mentioned videotapes. I need those too. I unlock the doors and they ransack the place. Everything gets taken. Printed reports from the last few years disappear into those vans. The videotapes get bagged up and held by the commander himself. He studies the gun cage. Cute, you're out of your league. He scoffs. Finally, they found everything they looked for. The commander tells me, call the number. Tell them it's contained. You need a new superior. Also, don't talk about this to anyone. They leave, and just on cue, the fire brigade and a few news vans show up. The fire is contained, the news reports say. Rumors of missing campers are unsubstantiated at this time. Still, the rumors alone are enough to scare of this season's campers. The quick change-up of managers is chalked up to bureaucracy. The press dies down after a week or two. The new manager is very good at dealing with them. Thankfully, with no new campers and our now even shorter open hours, we can get more work done around here. Rebuilding the station took some time, and we just set up the new campsites. They're practically spitting distance from the station. Nothing dramatic happens for a few days. Then on a whim, the manager tells us to set up some cameras around the station and the campsites. There's usually so much human activity around here. All you see are some raccoons, maybe the rare hungry bear, but we humor him and set them up all around. Couple of days pass. We collect the footage. I play poker with one of the rookies while the manager watches hours of footage of an empty, but brilliantly illuminated parking lot. Then he gets to the footage around the station. Screams come from the office. We barge in and he's stamping on the camera hard drives, gibbering things I can't understand. Along the lines of, he told me it was clean, safe. No recent activity. Bullshit here, I'm not gonna do it. He barks at us to leave. Later, he makes a call. Rookie goes up to the door and listens in. Rookie comes back reporting, yeah, he's demanding a transfer. Says they lied to him, something about they didn't do their jobs properly. He's not prepared or equipped here. Then I just heard the phone click and some sobbing. Hours later, my manager exits the office. His shoulders are slumped, defeated. We cut our hours even further. Practically open on weekends only. We'll have a full staff ready those days, but a skeleton crew the rest of the time. Campers are required to check into one of the closest sites. No campsite, and they're told to leave. We are not authorized to leave the station after dark under any circumstances. In an emergency, do not call 911, call the number and do exactly what they say. We draw straws for who gets overnight shifts. Why we need to stay overnight if we can't do anything is beyond me. I asked the manager about it, and he just said that standard protocol is to have someone on hand to report any irregularities overnight. I have to work my overnight shift. I keep my phone close, the number dialed in, ready if I need to call. It is a bad night. I just wind up pacing around with my shotgun, glancing into the bright floodlights, trying to see what's past them. I hear crickets and it relaxes me. Prey is quiet when predators are around. It is a long night. The next night, my manager draws the short straw. He seems resigned. In the end, we all have to take a turn. He brings the brightest damn tactical flashlight I've ever seen. Said he bought it just because he's afraid of the dark. He isn't really. He's afraid of the things in the dark. I get a phone call at 3 a.m. It's him. Get over here now and bring guns. Well, you have a damn arsenal. Now! Oh, I swear to God, I fucked up. Oh man, I think they're attracted to the light. I called that number and all they said was backup would be here in the morning. Oh fuck, goddamn. I hear the piercing staccato of gunshots. A pause. More gunshots, screaming, scuffling. The line goes dead. I call the number. A new terse voice answers. Look, I work at Park. I just got off the phone with... I just spoke with what can you report? Something bad happened. It's serious. I heard gunshots. We will have backup there as soon as possible. Did he say anything else? Yeah, he said he thought they were attracted to the light. Doesn't make sense to me. Interesting. Thank you for your report. The park is now closed. You will be reassigned. Goodbye. Click. Officially, the park was closed to be scheduled for a controlled burn. Let the old trees die and make room for new ones. There was nothing in the official report about what happened to the manager on duty. The public understanding was bureaucracies need to be shaken up on occasion. No one asked any more questions. I get transferred to a new park halfway across the country. Change of scenery and beautiful. They've got some odd rules here too. Don't go far after dark and don't carry a flashlight. I'm concerned about why. Why can't you use a flashlight at night when you need one? They won't tell me. I previously tried to post on here with a few of my experiences rolled into one. However, I did not realize this broke the rules of this page, so I am going to be posting frequent updates of individual experiences. The advantage to this is that I will feel further inclined to include more detail, as each post will be dedicated to the specific encounter. However, many of the following events happened years ago. Please learn from my posts as much as you enjoy them. I've been a park ranger in a national park that's located in the United Kingdom, England, for just over 10 years. I'm not going to tell you which one or even the county of which it's located for the sake of my job as I still work here, but there are some pretty weird things that you find every so often while on shift. Things that my superiors would likely not appreciate me sharing online. My job mainly involves patrolling the trails and checking that they're all in a safe state for people to walk through. I was also asked to talk with school children in assemblies and such after about a year on the job, to express how important it is to stay with the group and on the trails. I gave pretty obvious reasons for this, but little did I know I would soon discover some of the horrifying truths as to why they should never wander off. The first story I'm going to share with you took place on a beautiful spring morning in June, I think. This was during my first year on the job. The sun was still low in the sky, but it was slowly rising and brightening my surroundings. I was on a normal morning patrol through one of the deeper trails as it hadn't been checked recently, and protocol to frequently check all the trails for fallen trees and any potential natural hazards to hikers. It was such a beautiful morning. I remember walking along with a slight smile on my face as I listened to nature waking up in the trees, and I found the cool breeze very relaxing, and it had a truly peaceful effect on my mood. Suddenly, the trees to my left were filled with the sounds of birds squawking loudly as they frantically flew away. I stopped and listened for a moment. Silence. A quote from another story I have read here reads very true to this situation. Prey is silent when predators are near. Now understand that we don't have any bears or wolves here in England, nothing like that, so I supposed it could be a deer that had snapped a twig. However, the noise wouldn't usually drop like that, as deer don't pose much of a threat to wildlife at all. I continued on, not thinking anything of it, and after a short time, I got the urge to check behind me. There was a man walking maybe 100 meters back, and I was on a long straight, so it was easy to tell. I was confused, as the trails aren't usually used until a little later, when early dog walkers would show up. And even then, few would wander this far into the woods at this time. He seemed to be walking at a very relaxed pace, his hands in his dark blue hoodie's pockets, and he had faded blue jeans. I radioed over to ask if anyone had seen someone enter the trail I was walking shortly after I left, but no one had seen anyone come in or out, other than the occasional dog walker. I thought nothing of it, but continued on at a slightly hurried pace. I usually wouldn't be bothered about being out on my own with another stranger. I wasn't a small bloke nor someone to get spooked easily. However, this guy just gave me a bad feeling. I was approaching a gate that leads to a much denser area of the woodland, more like a thick forest. And as I closed the gate behind me, I noticed this man had stopped dead in his tracks. He seemed to be staring right at me, but I couldn't be sure. Then he broke into a sprint. Not a light jog that someone out for exercise might. I'm talking a full-on sprint. It was almost aggressive. I freaked out and turned to run. Why would a complete stranger who was previously so calm and relaxed suddenly be sprinting at me? He hadn't called for help or even waved to me. Fortunately, the trail's long straight section was over, and I ran round a curve and hid behind one of many large rocks that were by the side of the trail. I could hear his heavy footsteps thudding towards me right until he was just on the other side of the rock, and he stopped. Again, dead in his tracks. He wasn't even out of breath. He just seemed to stand there for a while and then just walked off. I waited for what must have been close to 10 minutes to be sure he was far ahead, and radioed the strange encounter to my colleagues, who agreed it was strange, and I cautiously continued on with my patrol. I never saw that strange man again, and I hope I never do. I have many more memories I would like to share with you. Stay safe out there, kids. You are rarely truly alone in the forest.